Hi, everybody. Good morning. Um, this is Scott Fischetti from Geopath. Just want to say thank you to everybody for joining today's February out-of-home office hours with an update on the Geopath Insight Suite. First of all, I just want to apologize to everybody for the technical difficulties. I'm glad we were logging in early and checking everything. There was some technical difficulties that we're still trying to figure out with GoToWebinar. But fortunately, just as an organization, we're actually transitioning to Zoom for our webinars in the future. So anyway, it's probably maybe a fortuitous happening so that we could actually transition sooner than we thought. So anyhow, again, apologies. It seems like the majority of people who had registered were able to transition really quickly. So again, thank you and apologies for any last minute switching or confusion. I'm here with Brian Shopper as always.
Morning.
And he'll be here to actually do the walkthrough today for the Insight Suite. As always, if you do have questions, please ask them right along. We try to answer them in real time so they're more relevant to to when they are asked, so you can probably see the visual in relation to the question being asked. Again, thank you. I know a number of you are joining for the first time or are joining, may have been a while since you've joined last. So I think you'll see a lot of updates and changes to the Insight Suite because, as always, we have been evolving the Insight Suite right along since May, and that's why we have these sessions to really make sure everybody's aware of what's changing and just educate you on the changes and how to use them to create value. Because, as I'll talk about in a moment in the deck, we realize that the impressions data are still for non-commercial use, but there's still value you can get out of the Insight Suite for your clients. But without further ado, let me just jump into to the deck really quickly. Boom. So for those of you, again, for attending for the first time, what we typically do on these sessions, I'll walk through a quick deck and just show you what the changes are, and then we'll go into the Insight Suite, demonstrate those, and usually we try to walk through a scenario that really tries to show how you can use the tool, again, to create value, but also how it leverages some of the new features of the Insight Suite. If there's something that you're wondering about, again, please ask a question, but given all the functionality and capabilities of the Insight Suite right now, we don't have the opportunity to go through everything in a lot of detail. We've covered a lot of things throughout the course of the last 6 or 7 months since May. So we can, if you do have additional questions, we can direct you to a webinar where we cover that, or we're always happy to set up a custom webinar for any organization to really walk them through everything in detail, which I'll talk about at the end of the session. And then we always want to show you where you can find support, because that's key, and give us feedback on the Insight Suite itself. I mentioned this a little bit already, but just to reiterate, the tool is changing. We're on an agile release methodology. So what that means is we'll put out a feature and we'll continue to iterate on it. A great example of this is the Places module, where we have it, it's there and it functions, but you'll see in the coming weeks how we're going to iterate on that and how there's going to be many, many more capabilities with that, the ability to upload custom sets of places, the ability to really get more granular in the types and the lists and have more information around the points of interest that you put in, so that you'll see that's a great example of how it's going to evolve. The impression data, and I say this every session, but I want to make sure I say it out loud. Impression data is for non-commercial use because we're in the beta phase. That doesn't mean that the tool can't be used to guide recommendations. Using the audiences in there really does help, and that's what we'll show you in the user scenarios today that we're going to walk through today. Really does help you make a more educated kind of sense of what inventory reaches certain audiences, and you can use that information to really help guide the recommendations you make on inventory. It's just that the impression data that you would get based on those recommendations, you need to go to wherever you currently get that impression information and pull it from there. That's the only difference. And again, definitely want you to continue to explore and provide feedback. So again, if this is first time you're seeing the Insight Suite, just a couple quick things before we do jump into it. You'll see it's very interactive. We have an interactive mapping capabilities that really drive a lot of the functionality and a lot of the user experience. So you can zoom in to any specific street intersection, that kind of stuff. And just on the back end, it's really going to be powered by a unified audited database. So what that really means is ultimately when, which is going to happen in the next couple of weeks, where we're going to be directly porting the data from that unified database, that ultimately means is a quicker timeline of when a new piece of inventory enters the system to when it's going to show up in the Insight Suite. And this will be, you'll see this happening very soon, and we're very excited about that. The other thing is, as always, you know, we knew and heard loud and clear from our members that audience is key. And we hope you see in the tools an audience-first approach, right? Where you can start and guide the filtering, the marketing by the audience. And there's 2,000 plus audiences in there today, and I'll show you a list of those. But again, we really made an attempt to make sure that we have that audience-first approach. And then, you know, all the inventory is mapped on the Insight Suite, on the interactive maps. And as you dig down and click on any one piece of inventory, you'll see all the additional information that's provided for you in terms of zip codes it's drawing audience from, market areas, as well as other audiences it's over-indexing for. So recently added features are going to walk through those here. So as I said, there's about 2,000 audiences supported right now. And these are the list of them right here. And you can see last month in January, the magazine and newspaper, print media usage, as well as the psychographics, all from MRI, have been added to the tool. And overall, our partner on the demographics, just to tell everybody again, it's Claritas. So we're partnering with them, and they're porting in information from GfK MRI, from census, from you know, credit card purchase data. So it's a holistic sources, and they have their proprietary PRISM segmentation that we're able to have as part of our tool as well, and our members have access to that now as well. So other user interface and functionality changes that happened over the course of the last month or so. If you were on the call in January, you would see me talking about these already, but I want to refresh everybody's memory on some of these changes. So you can, inventory filters, we've added the threshold filter here, so you can use that to guide and filter your impression by kind of target audience impressions, or as well as impression composition percent. Note that the in-market version of those, the second line there, only when you start to pick a market does that start to show up, and you're able to use the slider there. And you'll see that there's an improvement coming, which I'll talk about again in a moment. We're improving upon this functionality here. Also, this is one thing that I think is really exciting as well, is that you can map individual units and see a chloropleth map of the locations, the zip codes rather, where it's drawing the audience from. You can also do it for market areas, so DMAs, et cetera, but I find the zip code one to be extremely informative. And oftentimes, in this example isn't necessarily showing that, but oftentimes you can plot that, that unit, and you see that the top 5 zip codes where it's drawing an audience from are zip codes where it's not even located. And again, I would say that allows us to start to tell that movement story and out of home that we like to tell. And then you can actually color code and custom, create custom colors for the chloropleth maps as well. And there's a number of other areas where you can do that as well in the tool. So coming soon, so I believe next Tuesday is the next release, and you'll see some additional changes to the Insight Suite. So that won't be reflected in what we walk through today, but in the coming days, you'll see them reflected in the next release. And they're a handful of smallish changes, but they're important ones. So we have the ability now, or will have the ability, to validate the list of Geopath or plant unit IDs as you go along. So sometimes you might get a list, and sometimes maybe there's a mix of plant IDs and Geopath IDs. And again, the tool is very capable, and you can just copy and paste these in from an Excel file, a Word document, a text file, etc., email. And now you have the ability for it to tell you like, oh, okay, see these you'll see here, the ones in the purple are not valid. So they may be plant IDs. So you can take those and copy those into the plant ID and get a sense of that. Or maybe they're just units that are unaudited in our system. So again, it gives you more capabilities, more understanding, and it'll show you that list, and you can copy that list and then use it. And again, it'll just show, ultimately, you can apply and just show the Geopath panel IDs that are in the system, or similarly the plant ID. And here's what I was talking about with the threshold filter being changing. So now it will, in the coming days, visually show you the number of units that fall within the sliding bar in terms of how many units are, fall into that category that you're trying to filter for. And then this is something, again, in the previous session, we built a map, a custom map that you could export and share with clients. And so now that the customization capabilities are just increasing. So the filter pills, as we call them, you see the little breadcrumbs that track along at the bottom of the map that show you what you've added to the map. You have greater customization capabilities with that, because you can even see from this example, maybe you don't want to show that big pill in the middle that says media types because there's so much stuff and they distract from the visual. So you can choose which ones you want to turn on and turn off. Previously it was an all or nothing. Now you have more customization capabilities with that. And another small change to the mapping capabilities is, as of last session, you could always bring in a logo, but always subtly, it would always be positioned underneath. It would be layered underneath the text box. So now it's just layered above, and so you can actually put it in and show it as part of the text box if you want to. It just gives you an extra bit of capabilities that weren't there before. And then another aspect that's improving is the zip code boundaries come into focus sooner as you zoom in. Previously, you would see a heat map and of the different zip codes where it's drawing the onions from, and then it would be pretty, you have to zoom in fairly far to have the zip codes start to come into focus. We've just made that capability more capable, so to speak. So you can zoom in less and just have the zip code start to show up, or vice versa. You can zoom out further and have the zip code stay longer. So that's about it right now. I think we want to spend some time jumping in and walking through the Insight Suite. Any questions yet, Brian?
Nope, nothing yet.
Okay, cool. Again, I do want to apologize for the last minute transition. Brian's going to take us through and do a walkthrough of the Insight Suite and do a really interesting scenario that we came up with, a local case study that we're working on, well, use case rather, that we're working on, and hopefully you'll find it useful and valuable, and feel free to ask questions right along. Cool.
All right, thank you, Scott. I'm just going to get myself all situated here. Bear with me as I switch over. Okay, you should be seeing my browser with the Insight Suite right now. I was actually, while Scott was going through and explaining some of the features, I was going through and looking at some of the people that are on today, and there are actually some names on here I've never seen before. So first off, welcome to everyone who's never been and everyone returning. And for those new people, I do want to go and sort of do a high-level overview of just the features that you'll see in the Insight Suite as you go through, and sort of what to expect and what to look for where. So right when you log in, this is your landing page. You're looking at the whole continental US with all of our audited inventory. That's all these little teal dots spread out across the US. Over on this right-hand side, these are some overview metrics of all the inventory that you're looking at, and as you filter, these will change to reflect what inventory you are actually filtered for. But right now, this is just everything that you're seeing, all of the US inventory, and on a weekly basis. So we've got TRPs, we've got target percent composition, composition index, and then total impressions and target impressions. And one thing to just quickly note, the target impressions and the total impressions are the same right now, and that's because we haven't applied an audience onto here at all. We're just base level person 0+ impressions. That's our standard base for this metric right now. And as we apply audiences, that will change as we go through. So before we get into sort of the features of this tab right here, and I say tab because we have quite a bit of modules on this left-hand side that we can utilize. I'm going to walk through what each of those do. In this home button right here, this will give you just kind of an overview of what each of these 4 different modules are that you can look through. Workspace, this first one here, this is for campaign building and packages and doing different scenarios. This is going to be a lot of our planning and eventually, coming soon actually, what our Oakplan tool does. That's where these kind of features will be. So this is for, plans and packages and things like that. The tab that we were just in with all the mapping features, that's the Explore tab. I do almost all of my time in the Explore tab. I think most people will for the time being. And that's really where you can just get your hands dirty and really explore what there is to offer. And so we'll be doing most of our time throughout that one. The Places tab below that is in beta right now. That's a point of interest and places module as given by the name, but as it builds out further, we'll be able to do custom locations and really utilize points of interest alongside with inventory and just see how they compare with each other. So I'll show you a little bit of how to use that today. In the scenario that Scott was talking about, we'll actually be using a point of interest that we find in places. And then reports is coming soon, and that is going to be sort of post-campaign analytics, graphs, charts, things like that, a lot more visual representation of the data that you get on the back end. So I'm going to go back into the Explore tab. Like I said, that's going to be where we'll be doing most of our work today. And I just want to start and go through some of these high-level features. Let me zoom in a tiny bit so we can just get a better look at the US. So across the top here, these are 4 main buckets that you can use to do a variety of different things. So define target, as Scott was saying, a big impetus for this was an audience-first approach. So very first thing we do in the Insight Suite, if you go left to right, is define your audience, where and who. So the assign market, this is at a DMA level right now, and so you can just type in whatever DMA you want, hit apply, and then it will right now filter out all of the inventory that's not within that DMA, and you'll look at the audience and the inventory for just that DMA. And again, we'll do a scenario with all this later. Select audience, this is where Scott was saying we've got over 2,000 audience variables, and that includes things like population, so more census level. So the demographics, these are very standard. Behaviors, some work behaviors and language and things like that. Household profile, a little bit more detailed census style data. And then Prism Premier, this is through our partners at Claritas. These are pre-bucketed audience segments. If you've ever worked with these before, you're most likely familiar with what these are. People tend to use them by their numbers, and they're good just as if you know the kind of person that you want to target. You don't know specifically, one variable or another. You have a general sense of the kind of people, wealthy, middle-aged, mostly with kids. This is a great place to start to look for that. And we also have some documentation on this in this feedback button over here. Say you wanted to know what movers and shakers were, you could just search for that right there, and there's a whole article that'll pop up, and you can look through that right there. So from there, we have our consumer profile, and this one has a really diverse group and a big variety here. This is broken down into several categories. We've got automobile, voting, restaurants, radio, digital video displays, telecommunications, which includes phone and TV usage, and then newspaper, magazine, print usage, and psychographics, which are particularly interesting because they're kind of the more abstract variables that you can't quite, you don't quite think of right away, but it's a really great way to sort of get inside the head of people. And so we'll go through some of those later on. And as Scott was saying, we're going to have upwards of 6,500 variables built into this, and it's just a really great place to start exploring reaching your audiences. So that's that define target tab right there. So now we're going to move over to filter inventory. And as you can see here in the map, there's a lot of inventory right now. The most useful way, I think, to really start to evaluate is to net it down and get smaller and then look at more specific things. So you can filter by things like media type, and within each of these, there's a drop down so you can look at more specific types. You can also do digital versus non-digital, so you can just select one or the other. Media attributes is really interesting. Say you want only east-facing boards, you can do that. Illumination, that's by hour, and you can do panel size, so you can really get specific with the kind of inventory that you're looking for. Operators is exactly what you think. You can just look through and select the actual media owner and apply that, so you're only looking at their inventory. Location, actually there's quite a few different things that you can do here. Limit to map view is sort of a filter as I move the map kind of thing. Custom shape, you can either draw a radius or a shape that's like a polygon itself, and that comes in handy quite a bit. Filter by place set and radius. I was talking about the places module earlier, and that's where we can actually bring in a place from that module and set a radius and evaluate all the inventory in here within that radius. And then filter by specific geography. This is actually really interesting. You can do things like neighborhoods or colloquial names. So for example, here in New York City, you could do Nolita, which is just a neighborhood here in New York. It's kind of a very loose definition, but it's in here. You can do little things like that. You can do city limits, counties, a lot of different boundaries. So that's location. You can filter inventory that way. If you have a group of IDs from an email, from an Excel sheet, anything like that, you can paste in the Geopath IDs or the plant IDs, and it'll separate them out, and you just hit apply, and it'll only show you those. Thresholds is what Scott was talking about. You can do some campaign delivery variables, and that will be updated in the next one.
You can even see, sorry, just to jump in, you can see how it's grayed out because we have yet to pick a market, and that's the second level of filtering.
Right, exactly. And then load saved scenarios, so you can save scenarios in your workspace module, and load saved inventory sets. This is great. Say you're doing a bunch of work, you net it down, you've got a handful of units that you're looking at, and you want to come back tomorrow, or you have to leave, or something happens and you refresh. You can bring up your saved inventory set from before, as long as you saved it, and start right from there and evaluate and add some, remove some. Really helpful feature right there. Moving on to the right, this is the layers and display options is basically just visuals of your actual map here. And so you can take all of the components that you saved earlier, your places, your inventory, and you can add them onto the map in different layers with different colors. You can customize it how you want. And that's how Scott was explaining a little bit of that. And we'll do some of that later.
And this is ultimately where you kind of, at this point, can start to create these custom maps that you can export and use in a PowerPoint presentation, share with clients.
And you do that here, actually. So you come here and you can either save the view for later, or you can print the view and print as a PDF, as Scott was saying, and you can just export that and use it in an RFP or a presentation or anything like that. So I'm going to go back through each of these, and in our scenario, you'll see these in use. It's a little hard to wrap your head around them in sort of a high level like this. Before we start into our scenario, I want to talk about one feature that we mentioned in the newer features, and it's just a really interesting way to take a look at a single piece of inventory and see where that inventory's audience is coming from. So I'm going to come here to this layers and display options and audience delivery for a single unit, and I'm going to go to zip codes. I've got a unit in the Dallas area. Let's just zoom in first. In the Dallas area that I picked out that I want to just take a look at. And so we're actually going to be able to see the audience home locations and where these people live for this unit. So the unit number, let me just type this in here.
So ultimately, this will show you the top 5 zip codes where this unit is drawing an audience from.
I'm going to set a color too. We'll do sort of a nice orange color, 5 view. And so once this loads up, it will show us the piece of inventory, and then I think it's in the southern half here. It'll show us the piece of inventory and then the zip codes where that's coming from.
And a lot of times when you're doing this, you ultimately may
may want to clear out the rest of the inventory and things like that. So if you want to scroll up a little bit, you can start to see, you zoom in, you can see where that unit is.
So the unit is there right here. Oh, a little too far.
And I find this as an interesting example, and this is not unique, because you do see this throughout, where a lot of the zip code, a lot of times the unit is drawing a lot of its audience from zip codes outside of where it's located. I think that's really compelling.
If I can get the zoom level just right in here, you can actually see it does not fall in any of these, like Scott was saying, it does not fall in any of these top 5 zip codes. And its heaviest audience is actually this one over here, not even the closest to it. So just really interesting feature right there. I love to see that kind of thing. So we're going to clear this out, and I'm just going to start with the scenario that we worked out. Clear all. So since we're in the Dallas market, I actually think Scott is going to be traveling and be in Dallas very soon. So we thought, let's do that. That's a great place to start. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit more so you can see this change happen. A little bit more.
Yeah, I was also I was kind of combining 2 things when I was thinking about this scenario. So potentially I'm going to be in Dallas, and I was talking with somebody earlier in the week about sandwich shop, right? They're trying to find out more information on pitching, I believe, maybe pitching a sandwich chain. So let's do something around there, but let's try to find something very local.
Sure.
Use a local example, versus a chain example, and we'll kind of mix that in as well. You'll see as we go along.
So I'm going to start with define target, and like I said, this is just, you don't have to start this way. You can filter your inventory first. There's no first step that you necessarily have to do. So we'll start with define target, and what I'm going to do is assign market. We'll set the Dallas DMA, Dallas Fort Worth, apply. So you're going to see it will filter out everything that's not within the Dallas DMA. So we'll just give it a second. It'll pop up here.
Just as you're doing that, we got a question when you were showing the zip codes. There was a question on, how we derive that. Is that based on standard traffic patterns? Just to give everyone a sense of, how we're getting to this. Because of how we're pulling in the mobile data and connected car data and app data, we have an understanding of all trip journeys, as well as with the demographic data at home locations, right? We have it aggregated, anonymized for census block groups, and then we're able to use that data and extrapolate out all the trip patterns, all the trip journeys, and which of those take us by the particular unit of inventory. And so then, again, that gets extrapolated back to the home location, so we have a general sense of where those people are coming from, who are passing by that particular unit. And again, happy to talk further about that if anybody else has additional questions.
Yeah, great. That's a great question. All right, so you can see I filtered out the for the Dallas market. So that's shown here. We've got just under 9,000 units that we audit in this market. So I'm going to click that and just let ourselves zoom into it. And you'll see once this comes up, we can actually start coming here. You can see these ones out here. These are grayed out. These fall outside of that DMA. So we're only looking at ones right now in the DMA. And when you first log into the tool, there's quite a bit to see here. When you don't even have to filter for market. Once you just zoom in to a certain level, you'll get past all those teal dots and you'll start to see these colored ones. So say you want to know what those are. We have this key here. Oh, it's actually still got that. Let me just clear that. So it's not in there anymore. Okay, so we've got all those, where'd they go? Just 1 second. There we go. So we've got all these different color dots. So we've got bulletins are orange, posters yellow, street furniture teal color, walls and murals. So when you start to zoom in to a certain level beyond this, you can see that they actually start to change. So I'm going to pick this area right up here. Looks like we've got a decent mix of media types right here, and it's just easier to see. So now you can see at a certain zoom level, we get directionality. Oh, go back one in. And so, for example, like this one right here has an east-west facing. This one's got a north-south facing. These ones here with the black circle around them, those denote digital units. So you had a question about that. If you ever have a question about anything, you can either go to the feedback button or the help button, and I think the help button launches you into the support site itself. The feedback button is kind of dynamic and stays right in here. But say you want to know what the icons are. Let's just take a look. So maps, key symbols, icons, iconography. So you click that, and it's got this diagram right here that explains everything you need to know. So what the color is, the digital, non-digital, and then about the facing. And you can just kind of read up on all that. And this is the whole feedback and help section, just a really great repository for really any questions you have. And so now that we've got this area that we're looking at, let's dig into this scenario a little bit further. We have an area we want to look into, and it's got, let's say, a sandwich chain, a local sandwich chain. So let's try to find one of those. Actually, we'll go to the Places module. Let's actually go clear those. I was looking at Subway earlier. So we were doing a little bit of research into this area, and we found a local sandwich chain called Uncle Uber's. And so let's just take a look. Uncle Uber's. There it is, Commerce Street. Apply that. So that's it right there. Uncle Uber's, we got that. So it's just the only one. It's a single unit, or sorry, single location sandwich shop. So let's save this for later. We want to save this and bring it into our Explore module and evaluate that against inventory. So we're going to come over here to the Save As dropdown and save as new place set. I'll call it Uncle Uber's Dallas. All right. And you can name them anything. This is really just for your own reference. You can call it up later.
You know, sometimes you get questions on like what's the source for our point of interest data.
Yep.
So currently it's an open source source, but our partner on this is ultimately the Here Network, Here Maps. And so very soon that will be the source porting into the points of interest. But again, there's quite a few points of interest. And one of the reasons why we're doing this local example is to really show that there are a lot of local examples. And you can see Brian had already mapped out some subways there. So it is national chains as well as very local chains.
Yeah, and you know what, speaking of subways, let's do that again. I want to zoom into this. Let's see if there's any subways sort of in this actual area. Maybe they'd be direct competitors. So let's try to find some of those. So I'm going to clear that out. We have our Uncle Uber saved, so no worries about clearing that. And just Subway. Type in Subway and let's see, apply. Okay, yeah, we've got some right in this area. So I think Uncle Uber's is right over here, some in this area here. And again, just as a note, this Places module is in beta. So for right now, when you search for a place, you get a maximum of 10 locations. And this is just sort of so we can start to develop this further. It's just a good starting place so we could build out the functionality. And it will be able to do more in the future. We're going to expand this quite a bit.
So in the short term, the workaround is you can save these 10, you can clear it, move the map, and do another search, and you'll get more. And so ultimately, you can build a bigger list if you want to by doing that.
Right. You could save it here, save it as one place set, and then find 10 more, and then add to another place set.
To that same place.
So I'm just going to save these. Actually, all of these look fine to me. We'll just keep these save as a new place set. I'll just call it Subway Dallas.
Because ultimately, Uncle Uber is competing with Subway, and you know they may want to try to conquest some of their customers. I want to show you how you can do that.
So let's go right back into our Explore tab, and so it should have everything we had selected still. We might need to zoom back into the Dallas market, and then from there, what we're going to do is we'll take that unit, that location, Uncle Uber's, and we will start to use that as a point and evaluate inventory around that. So we're going to zoom right back into the DMA, let that catch up to us. All right, so now I'm going to come here to filter inventory, and we could filter out by media type. I don't want to do that yet. Let's say we want a good mix, a good media mix. Let's just pick anything, any units that fall within a 5-mile radius, for example. So let's go to location and then filter by place set and radius, because if you remember, we saved the Uncle Uber's by itself as a place set. So we can actually search for it, Uncle Uber's Dallas. Oh, you know, let me just fix that in a second. I set it for 1 mile. It has 1 mile default. I'll just change that. That's very tight. You can see a very small radius right there. So we'll change that to 5, and then we're going to reapply that. Even zoomed out at this level, it looks very, very tight radius, but there's quite a bit in here. So I'm going to hide this so we can get a better look at it. And we'll zoom in. There's quite a bit of inventory in this 5-mile radius.
And you can see over on the right rail there, it looks like there's about 1,400 units just in that 5-mile radius. And so there's ways to filter and sort on there as well.
That's actually fine. So at this zoom level, it should start to show us directionality and things like that. I'll just let this catch up to me for a second. There we go. So let's start to look at different audiences. We know we have a location, we have a 5-mile radius, and we have a wealth of 1,400 different units. So let's pick some units that might reach a certain type of target. So let's, as you can see right over here, person 0+, that's our base level impressions, that's total impressions. You can see, again, target impressions is the same because we haven't set a target. Let's set a target, let's set an audience. So you go define target, select audience, and I'm gonna come into the populations, and again, this is like census level things. So let's go demographics and let's pick just people 18+, and we're gonna apply. So you shouldn't see anything change visually right away, but you will see, you can kind of start to see it now, you get a change in this right-hand rail here. So our target impressions, now that we have our target, it always tells you what it is. 18+, you can see our target impressions there, and you can see the metrics as they evaluate against the market and the whole. So this really doesn't help us find inventory yet. Let's filter it down. So if you go here to this select dropdown, you can actually see the top 25, 50, 100, or you could do a custom, the top inventory for meeting that target. So let's do top 25. So that's actually filters out quite a bit. Just clustered in this area, these units here reach the 18+ audience best based on audience index.
Right. And you're sorting by target composition.
Right.
percent. So those that have those units represent that audience the best.
Yeah.
Right now for that particular.
And just as a quick aside, there's another way that we can actually evaluate this inventory. If you click this bottom left-hand arrow, you can actually see in a very similar view, just sort of laid out horizontally, the tabular view of all this data. So let me bring this up so we can see it a little bit better. So these units, it's filtering by target audience index. And so all these ones in this sort of deep teal color here are all over-indexing. You can see by 27, by 23. So these units here reach the 18+ target 28% better than average for the market. So again, it's filtering for just the top 25. We can change that here as well. It's the same drop downs as on the right-hand rail. And so I'm going to save these 25. Let's save these as an inventory set. So save as new inventory set. And we're going to call them Uncle Uber's top 25 18+. And again, they can be anything. It's just for your reference to call up later. And like I was saying with the inventory sets, say you walk away from the tool, you come back tomorrow, you can just call that up and be right where you are right with this. So you don't have to filter again. And I'm going to save these for later and we'll come back and actually utilize these. So let's pick another audience. Let's pick a more specific one. So we're going to actually, since we were looking at this as potentially a conquesting campaign, let's pick people who've been to a Subway in the past 30 days. I know that in the consumer profiles, there's a lot of restaurant and QSR variables. So let's just take a look at what we have for Subway. So quick service restaurant for breakfast, lunch, dinner, 30 days. Let's just do in general. It doesn't matter the meal, just at all. Anyone who's been there at all. So apply. So we've got all of our units in this 5-mile radius again. And again, let's come over here and let's look at just the top 25 now for Subway eaters. Top 25. Okay, a little bit different, actually very clustered to this Uncle Uber's location, very nearby. So that might be a good target there. So let's save that one as well. So save a new inventory set and Uncle Uber's top 25 Subway eaters. Save that one. And you know, let's do one more just so we can get a good sense of the market. Oh, not that one. So let's check out some of the psychographics. So I know that there are some psychographics based on people's opinions of fast food. So let's take a look at those. Fast food, eating food at fast food restaurants is fun. I like healthier options, fast food when I'm in a rush. Let's do fast food is fun. People who enjoy going out for fast food, that might be a good way to target some potential customers. So apply that one.
As it's filtering right there, Brian, as you're doing that, there's another question about audiences and the ability to combine them. So right now, that capability isn't here yet, but it will be soon. And that was one of the key things with the transition to Claritas, because we now have that data at the home level, so we're able to do more cross-tabulations than we would have been able to before. So that is something that's coming, but it's not quite there yet. There are a handful of metrics that you can cross-tab if you are in the defined target. It's mostly in the population category, where you, like, for example, you can probably pick, like, speak Spanish in the home, and then it allows you to pick an age group and things like that. So there's a handful that are ready to go, but that functionality is coming.
So we've set that's a great question. We get that one a lot. So we've set our target here, and again, this is people who enjoy eating at fast food restaurants. And let's set the top 25 one more time, just like before. Top 25, and we'll let that filter out. That's really interesting, actually. Very different spread than the other two, sort of in the more southwest section of this 5-mile radius. So again, let's save these top 25 as a new inventory set. And Uncle Uber's top 25, and this is fast food fun. So now that we've done that, we've saved Uncle Uber's as a location, we've saved a group of subways as a location, and then we have 3 different inventory sets that we've saved. What can we do with those? We've done all this work. Let's put it together in a map that we can actually visualize out, and then maybe we can send that out to for a presentation or something like that. So I'm going to clear my map here of this radius, and I'm just going to use this select dropdown, and I'm going to click none. And so that's actually going to deselect the inventory on the map completely. And then so when you start with sort of a fresh canvas, we can build up from there.
And you know, you don't have to do that.
No.
We just think it's a nice best practice. So you know, there's less colors interfering with what you want your client to see.
Yeah,
right?
we make a lot of maps here, and it's always really helpful to start with something clean and then add layers on top of that.
Yep.
So now that we've got our layers that we want to actually apply to the map, we come over to layers and display options. And you can see there's a couple different things we can start with. We've got inventory sets, place sets, audience delivery for a single unit, which is that example I showed at the beginning. You can see the top zip codes of a unit. And then single place, you could actually just search for a single place there. So since we saved inventory sets and place sets, we'll start with that. I'm going to do Uncle Uber's first, and Uncle Uber's Dallas, and then Subway's Dallas. I'm going to put those both on our map. And let me just change these. So Uncle Uber's, we can make it a nice light blue color. And Subway, I know Subway's got sort of a vibrant green as part of green and blue, so we'll do green. All right, so we've got those. Let's apply those as a starting place. And so what we're going to do is, once we've gotten these on here, let's see, so blue and Uncle Uber's, we got some Subways in here. So now that we've done that, let's do the same thing for our inventory sets. So inventory sets, call it Uncle Uber's, top 2518, fast food is fun, and Subway eaters. So now let's come up here, and we can change the colors of each of these. So 18 plus, we can make that like a purple color. We'll do purple. All right, the fast food is fun. We'll do sort of a nice, this vibrant orangey red color. And then Subway eaters, make that like a yellowy color, because I know Subway also has yellow as part of theirs. So might not look great, but.
You know, and just as you're doing that, if you do have the actual brand colors, you can type those in.
Yeah, the
hexadecimal code. So you can actually get them as tight to the brand colors as you need to.
So I'm going to apply those 3 layers right there. And we'll give that just a second to come in.
And I think the interesting part is, like, again, you'll see, and we've kind of talked as Brian was setting this up, you see how by choosing an audience, it creates a different set of inventory that you can use. And again, none of these are wrong, and you may want to combine them in one recommendation, but it really just shows you how different audiences really create a different set of recommendations.
Mm-hmm. So you can see here, there's these orange ones, I believe, where fast food is fun, and then in here we got the purple and the yellow ones, just Subway eaters and 18+, and they each kind of show a different area that their top 25 is. So, you know, just a good way to sort of visualize out how you can maybe target these people. So a couple other features that we have in this section right here. Say we wanted to do a little bit more, make it a little bit more customized. You can actually, as Scott was saying, do some custom logos and custom text. So display options, I'm going to add a custom logo. And earlier, I actually downloaded an Uncle Uber's, should be this one, I find it over here. I downloaded an Uncle Uber's logo. There we go. So I'm going to hit apply. There it'll be. Just give it a second. And so once this all kind of comes back, what we can actually do is we can take this logo and resize it, move it around, and I'm actually just going to place it over where the Uncle Uber's location is. Just kind of a more fun visual way to see, okay, this is exactly what we're trying to do. This is where we want it to be. So make it kind of small. We can place it right here. There we go. So we've got that there. And say you wanted to add some custom text just explaining what this was, you can do that as well. And the same way, so custom text, and you can just type it in here. You can add a white background. You know. Which typically, if you are typing in text, given that it's overlaid on the map, it typically is a good best practice to add the white background, for at least for the text. Mm-hmm. Don't necessarily have to do it for the logo. So I'm just going to add that, and in just a second, you'll see that come up. And so what we're going to do actually is, once we've got our logo, we've got our text, we've got all of our units that we wanted on here, we can then save that view for later use, or we can export it as a PDF and then use the image in presentations and things like that. So let me just bring this over here. You can kind of see it right there. Drag that out. And so, oh, there we go. And let me just, there we go. So if you come into actions, you can actually save view. So I'll save view, we'll call it something, you know, Uncle Uber's Dallas. And you can just save that for later. And then we'll go to print view, and you'll actually get the option to print it as a PDF, and then you can save that for later. And we'll give you option. You can print the landscape or portrait. It should bring up your browser's printer options. Right. And so this is obviously the portrait. The thing a lot of times landscape often is also fairly helpful for doing it and importing it into a PDF or importing it into a PowerPoint rather. Yeah, definitely. You can get a little bit more resolution that way. Yeah, and you could do various different things. And you could have increased the resolution in the tool before you went to this view, and it would have been tighter in. Yes, and also just a thing to note, you can see this on the map when you're looking at the map itself. But when you export and you print the map, it's actually got these little pills here that tell you exactly what you're looking at. So you've got the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas DMA. It's still got one of our audiences selected, but say you were just exporting a map of your inventory, it would show you what your filters were, where you're looking, and all things like that. Cool. Were there any other questions about that? Yes. So there's one question about, so as you were creating your sets there, there's a question like, well, what if there's overlap? Like, is there an optimization ability within the tool? And you can actually drag the layers around. So say you wanted, I'm not sure if that's exactly what the question was asking, but say you wanted your orange inventory on top of that one. You can actually drag them around and then apply that view, and you can sort of stack the layers as you want. Right. There's going to be a lot more features coming to improve the actual mappable.
Right. And so ultimately, I think the question really is about like in optimizing in terms of number of units. So I don't want a unit in this package showing in that package. And I do believe that is something to come actually.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
We had a meeting with the developers yesterday, and Dylan Megan, who's driving a lot of the back-end development from our side, and that is something that was mentioned yesterday. Another question, is there an option for a visual map key to explain what the different colors mean when printing? And yes, that is ultimately an option right here. If you go to display options, you can have the legends show up as well.
Yep.
So. And you can also just, again, quick thing, base map too. You can actually change the base map if you want a satellite view. There's ultimately other base maps will be imported into the system as well. We tend to use this version here because it allows things to show up better. But at times, though, it may be fun and interesting to do a satellite version as well.
Yes.
Cool. So then, if there's no questions, I want to just jump into back into the deck. Feel like few housekeeping things, but feel free to type in questions as we're summing up today. And again, do want to say thank you again for everybody joining and staying online with us. We do apologize for the last minute change of platform. And this is what Brian was mentioning earlier in terms of the help and support. You can always click the question mark in the tool itself, but this is where it brings you. So even if you're outside of the tool, you can go to support.geopath.io to get some additional help, to chat. There's live chat as well if you ever need help. This session, as well as the one we did yesterday, and all of our others are available at our going to the Geek Out tab of our website. This is just a screenshot. And scrolling down to the out of home office hours section. So we put up the most recent ones. And if you hadn't had a chance yet, we did one recently with the CEO of Simmons Insights / Simmons Research. We have a new series called Data Talks. So we want to really focus on the importance of data and various aspects of data. And we're doing a whole series on that. And that was one we did, like I said, about a week or so ago. So if there are questions, feel free to type them in. But I do want to tell you about some other upcoming webinars we're having. So the next Data Talk session is going to be with Horst Stipp from the ARF. And he, along with Kelly Flynn, will be also from the ARF, will be talking about some recent research they did. It really talks about the incremental benefits of adding additional channels, again, including out of home. So really helping make the case and getting some research around making a case for out of home and media plans. And so that's going to be Tuesday, March 19th from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And we just sent out a notice about that, I believe, on Monday. And then, so our next training talks, our training sessions will be in March. And again, these are always will be the last Thursday and Friday of every month. Moving forward, once we hit May, we pass the conference, I think we're going to ultimately start to do these in terms of having intro-level sessions as well as advanced sessions, because I know there's been a number of people joining these right along, and I know there's times where we rehash some stuff that we've talked about in other sessions. So we're going to start to break those out, but we'll do that once we get past the conference in May. And the other thing I want to say is, we always try to make these as valuable for our attendees as possible. So, if there's a scenario you'd like us to walk through in an upcoming webinar, let us know. Just reach out to us on geekout@geopath.org, and we'd be happy to, have that scenario show up as one example that we walk through. Because, again, we want to make these as relevant as possible in real life as possible. So please feel free to do that, to reach out to us.
We had one more question. We kind of addressed it a little bit earlier, but it was about, it says, when we're looking at a single unit, and the audience based on zip, where does that data come from? From traffic patterns and things like that. So, so that was actually, as Scott was saying, through our partners at Claritas and also through our partners at City Labs.
Yeah, it's ultimately based on how the data is getting ported into us. So
we are leveraging mobile data, connected car data, SDK data from apps, and then we get that in aggregated, anonymized fashion. But we understand it at a census block group level, so about 400 to 600 households per each census block group. And then we also, that allows us to create our traffic journey map, so to speak. So we model out all the trip journeys for everybody across the country simultaneously, but then overlaying the census, the demographic data from Claritas allows us to understand those specific neighborhoods, and then tying those two things together, we understand where the people are moving past the inventory and where they have come from ultimately in terms of home locations. So that's how we tie that back, or understand the zip codes where the audience is coming from. And again, happy to talk about that further with anybody. And again, as always, if you need a custom walkthrough or anything like that, you can reach out to us at geekout@geopath.org. We're always happy to do that. And if there's no more questions, again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next month, hopefully. All right, thank you everyone. Cheers.